Hi, Miguel. Thank you for your post. One thing right off the bat that you put in your post really made me think, and in reading through all of our posts, mine included, it wasn't something that I thought about. You mentioned that as you would take in information, you would look at people who discussed having kind of more in-depth mental health issues and refer them out for a more extensive survey. And I thought that was so powerful. I really feel like we can get in our mind what things look like in a clinical setting, and then sometimes when we switch settings, we remember the basics like confidentiality and informed consent, but it's also reminding ourselves of the responsibility that we hold once we find out that someone is struggling with something specifically, especially if it's information that they're giving us that's not anonymous. So I wanted to point that out, and I thought that was such an incredible point to keep in mind. Another piece that you mentioned that I thought was very helpful was the confidentiality. It sounds like, if I'm understanding your post correctly, that what you would be doing would be a little bit more less autonomy, essentially, that maybe these are people that would be willing to share their story or give you insight. But as a whole, I will say the confidentiality aspect is key. A lot of times, and again, this is just based on my own experiences, part of what led me into becoming a therapist outside of the church, so just moving from pastoral counseling, was the individuals that I came across that needed more support. One, it was so difficult for them to even come and get pastoral care because of their fear of confidentiality. They still just couldn't believe in their mind that they could come and speak to a pastor and get counsel and trust that it would stay safe and it wouldn't be shared with other staff members. And the other aspect of that is then there was a limited number of individuals in the community that were truly spiritually integrative and licensed, so that when those individuals that you're talking about needed more, but also really wanted someone who was steeped in faith tradition and it was a part of their own philosophy of counseling, there were a limited number of resources. And so, I definitely feel like that's something that God allowed me to see when I worked fully in the church. And you really speak to this well as you go through and decide and talk about what you would do. The other aspect is I like how you really worked to make it extremely cost effective, knowing that you volunteer and you would do that. And that's such a gift that we all have in those capacities. And then just the nominal amount that it would take in order for the church to print off the surveys or whatever tool that you used. And admittedly, I worked in a larger church that had more resources. So my mind, although I thought I was keeping it low, was still more focused on a church that had a little bit more discretionary funds. So this was a good reminder for me, regardless, is to really make sure that if I'm doing something like this in the community, that I'm paying careful attention to that church and making sure that finances are never a barrier for a church that wants to do some research and wants the opportunity to be able to kind of get the pulse of the people in their body. So thank you. I'm actually going to keep this and add this over to the side with different pieces that I've picked up along the way, but it gave me a lot of really great things to think about.